21st, 2021 meeting of the Greensboro City Council. Can I have a motion to go into open session?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Holston, seconded by Mrs. Thurm. Mrs. Hoffman, are you on the call?
Yes, I am, Mayor.
Are you, your vote, please?
Yes.
Mr. Holston,
Yes.
Dr. Wells,
Yes.
Mrs. Johnson?
Yes.
I'm a yes. Mrs. Abusawader?
Yes.
Mr. Outling?
Yes.
Mrs. Thurm?
Yes.
And Mrs. Hightower?
Yes.
Thank you. We are back in open session. We confirmed attendance. We will begin tonight's meeting with a moment of silence. Thank you. Mrs. Johnson, would you lead us in the pledge?
I think I know the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Tonight's meeting is open to the public with a partial opening of the council chamber. Due to capacity restrictions, a limited number of residents are allowed in the council chamber for specific items of interest. Staff and residents and council are requested to continue to wear face coverings. Mine is off because I'm speaking into the microphone at the moment. Residents may sign up to speak by 6 o'clock by using the Q-Minder kiosk just outside the chamber door upon arrival. To comply with requirements by the state in regards to Zoom meetings and to provide an optimum experience for the public, council will verbalize all motions and all votes will be conducted by roll call and the e-scribe. Council will also implement the electronic voting method. Each member of council must vote unless there is a direct conflict. We do allow and welcome speakers to address council. Council respects the right for the public to speak about matters of concern that can be addressed by council. Each speaker will be allotted 3 minutes. Comments that seem to be intended to incite unlawful behavior will be deemed out of order. Zoom participants are requested to mute their microphones until they are called upon to speak. The city of Greensboro is committed to promoting an environment that is free of discrimination, bias, and bullying. Thus, harassment, words, jokes, actions, or comments based on an individual's sex, sexual orientation, race, ethnic background, age, religion, physical condition, or other legally protected characteristic will not be tolerated. In order to be considered, written comments must be submitted online through the city's website, www.greensboro-nc.gov. We do have a consent agenda for items G1 through G31, which are a grouping of agenda items that are voted on with one single vote to expedite what are believed to be routine and non-controversial items. Any council member may withdraw an item from the consent agenda due to a conflict of interest or for the purpose of voting no. Items removed from the consent agenda for discussion will be placed on the January City Council business agenda. This meeting does include closed captioning. Depending on the length of tonight's meeting, we may take a short recess around 8 o'clock. We do have a special presentation, and I would like to ask Representative Amos Quick and Senator Gladys Robinson. Thank you so much for being with us in the council chambers this evening.
Good evening. I am Amos Quick, North Carolina House District 58 representative, and let me begin by saying happy holidays to council members and Merry Christmas, and to those who are watching, happy holidays and Merry Christmas to you as well. I'm glad to stand here with Senator Gladys Robinson, as tonight we want to honor one of Greensboro's finest citizens. He is no longer with us amongst the living, but we know that because of his faith that he is among a great cloud of witnesses who is cheering us on. We have a letter that I want to read, and then I'll yield the microphone to Senator Robinson. The letter reads to the Honorable Yvonne Johnson and family. Senator Gladys Robinson and I honor the memory of Attorney Walter Thaniel Johnson II and commemorate his service to the state of North Carolina. We present this letter on behalf of a grateful state in recognition of his devoted and selfless service for the betterment of the greater Greensboro community and our state. Attorney Johnson blazed a trail wherever he went, from the United States Armed Services to the hallowed halls of Duke University Law School, to the deliberative chambers of the Greensboro Board of Education, and so many other places. As various persons commented during the celebration of his life at Providence Baptist Church, his mark on the lives of countless others will resonate throughout generations, and he is not soon to be forgotten. Yet perhaps his greatest contribution was to serve as the patriarch of a family of community servants who continue his legacy of serving God by service to others. Senator Robinson and I feel privileged to have personally known Attorney Johnson and to be able to honor his memory. Please accept our continual condolences, our prayers, and our thanks. Signed, Amos Quick, North Carolina House of Representatives, District 58, and Senator Gladys A. Robinson, North Carolina Senate, District 28. And I'll give this to you, Ms. Johnson. And let me step back from being so formal. You know, Mama J, how this touches my heart, and how the memory of Papa J is very personal to me. He was not a father figure. He was a father for me. And I certainly thank you and your family for sharing him with me and so many in the community.
Thank you.
Well, good evening to the mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, members of the Greensboro City Council, and to the entire Greensboro community. It is my pleasure certainly to be here. I missed another opportunity because I was out of town, but I would say, and apologies to my sister Yvonne, that we had planned to do a similar thing in Raleigh, but we never could get out of there or plan a time to do it. So we're pleased to be here, and this is probably the best setting to be here so that your children and grandchildren could be here as well. But I want to say about Walter, as a church member and as a friend, most people don't know, Yvonne, you know, that Walter was our first attorney for my family. But he was a first among many things. And for those of you who don't know, Yvonne and my deceased husband were classmates at Dudley. So the Dudley and all the A&T, all the stuff goes deep in our families and all. But in terms of the servant, you know, it is so very important that those of us who are serving now leave a legacy. And Walter Johnson left a legacy. He did it while he was serving in the various roles at school board. He did it as a U.S. attorney. He did it in the community. He did it at church. And he certainly did it for his family to follow and his grandchildren. He's left a legacy that says that you may not be the first, but you must be one who serves and who serves your community, because he served, and he served humbly. I'll tell people a funny story, and Lisa will remember that when Walter would come to church, he always came to Sunday school. And he came to Sunday school, children wouldn't come, but the little grandchildren were trailing behind. He brought those grandchildren to Sunday school on Sunday mornings so that they would go to Sunday school. And that says something about a legacy. Grandpa says, this is what you must do, and this is what you must be like. This is the integrity. And that brought fondest memories to all of us. But I know that all of you will miss him. We miss him. We miss, when I decided to run for office, a couple of people I call Henry Fry and Walter Johnson, and in terms of advice. And that advice was just so important to me in terms of how did I move forward and with what support. So I continue to share with you in condolences, but from the state, Amos and I and the others there certainly share his memory and the legacy that he's left for Greensboro, for the state of North Carolina, and certainly for his family. So may God bless you.
Representative Amos Quick and Senator Robinson, I am grateful to both of you for your comments and for doing this. The family is grateful to you. Amos grew up in my house, very often spent the night. So I'm proud of both of you, but Amos, you know, I'm proud of you because I look at you as a son. But thank you very much for this. We miss him, but we know that he is okay. Thank you.
And Mrs. Johnson, it's so nice to see your family here with us
I
this
wanted to
evening as well.
recognize him.
Yes, please do.
Yeah, would my family please stand? I have my sons Vernon and Walter T. I have my daughter Lisa. I have my I call her my daughter Tina. She's my daughter-in-law, but she's like a daughter. And I have my youngest granddaughter, Maya Grace, and we have JT. Is that you under that mask? And I have my son-in-law JT, and so I'm happy to have all of them with us. And we certainly appreciate what you've done. Thank you.
And I do want to thank Senator Robinson and Representative Quick for being with us this evening. I'm sorry that we ran a little late, but we appreciate all of the hard work that you have done this session and the way that you have been responsive to our needs. And for that, I want to say thank you. So now we will move on to the consent agenda. Are there any items that somebody needs to remove?
If not, we can move the consent agenda.
Yes, Madam Mayor. I had a question on two of the items, but I can't get my stuff to pull up again, so the notes that I made, I can't get to come up. But G15, and I'm trying to find it.
I'm sorry, did you say G15?
Mhm. There was a question I had on G7, but I'll work it out later.
Did you say what, G15?
15 or 16? 15.
Thought I heard 15.
Yeah, it's
15.
15.
Okay.
That's the problem.
Is there a question
Yeah,
regarding?
yeah, actually, stay right there. My assistant's.
Do you want me to read? Do you want?
Yeah, well, read it because I do have
So
a couple.
G15 is a resolution to approve the window washing contract 2021-10952 in the amount of $198,900 with Scotty's Building Services LLC.
So my question, and apparently it wasn't a MWB company, but the company's out of Apex. So I had a question on the workforce. What type of workforce will they provide? Because they're coming from Apex to wash windows. So will they be hiring local people to assist with that? Do they have a crew? And I guess they'll bring them with them.
So with this contract, I think that this will be self-performed. So there is no subcontracting opportunities with that. I can confirm that and get back to you, but I think this will be self-performed.
It says self-perform when I've read, because I didn't manage to read everything before it all disappeared here. But the workforce piece of it, because when you talk about self-performing, you talk about washing windows. Are you bringing people from APAC to here or hiring some local
Gotcha. So do they do,
employees to impact local community efforts?
okay. So will they be using their current workforce or are they looking to hire local people to help on that project? I will
Yes.
find that out. That
Yeah,
do not
I
know.
think that's a critical piece because it's a
Okay.
3-year contract. and I know it's only 60-some thousand a year for 3 years. But it could have some type of local impact in that regard.
Okay,
So,
we can certainly find out and let you know.
all right, thank you. Not really.
You want to pull that aside to vote no on it? So we have a motion for the consent agenda minus item number 15. It's moved by Mr. Holston, do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mrs. Johnson. Mrs. Hoffman?
Yes.
Mr. Holston?
Yes.
Dr. Wells?
Yes.
Mrs. Johnson?
Yes.
I'm a yes. Mrs. Abusawader? Mr. Outling?
Yes.
Mrs. Sturm?
Yes.
And Mrs. Hightower?
Okay. Yes, this follows.
Okay. So now we move on to item number 15, which I read. Do we have a motion on item number 15?
Move the item.
Moved by Mrs. Thurm, seconded by Dr. Wells. Mrs. Hoffman,
Yes.
Mr. Holston,
Yes.
Dr. Wells,
Yes.
Mrs. Johnson.
Yes.
I am a yes. Mrs. Abusawader, Mr. Outling,
Yes.
Mrs. Thurm,
Yes.
and Mrs. Hightower.
No.
And that passes 8-1. We now move on to the public hearing portion of our agenda. We do have 2 speakers signed up to speak in favor of their item. Item number H1, H2, and H3 will be read together. Item number H1 is a public hearing for an ordinance annexing territory into the corporate limits for property located at 5807 Westgate City Boulevard for a portion of Westgate City Boulevard right-of-way, 3.19 acres, Gohar Global LLC. Item number H2 is a public hearing for an ordinance for original zoning for 5807 Westgate City Boulevard, Al Gohar for Gohar Global LLC. And item H3, a public hearing for an ordinance for original zoning for portions of Westgate City Boulevard Road right-of-way, City of Greensboro. Could we have a quick overview of this?
Sure thing. Thank you, Mayor. This item before you is an annexation and 2 original zoning requests located on Westgate City Boulevard. The property to the north is zoned conditional district commercial medium. The property to the east is zoned conditional district residential 3. The property to the south is zoned conditional district office. And the property to the west is zoned industrial under Jamestown's jurisdiction. As you can see from the aerial photo, the site is currently undeveloped. The area to the north is a self-storage facility. The area to the east is a single-family subdivision. The area to the south is a medical office, and the area to the west is an auto repair and commercial uses. This site is shown as commercial, or is designated as commercial on our future land use map and as urban general on the built form map. There's zoning for the site at 5807 Westgate City Boulevard is a conditional district. And you'll see on your screen, there are some conditions for this request. The conditions are related to the uses, the height of the buildings, the location of the opaque fence, and the freestanding signage that will be allowed on this particular site. Staff recommended approval of this request because it is consistent with the comprehensive plan's economic competitiveness big idea and the comprehensive plan's prioritizing sustainability goal to build economic resilience. And that was because the proposed commercial medium district, this request will permit a variety of commercial, retail, and office uses that are compatible with the general character and of the surrounding area. This case was also recommended by the Planning and Zoning Commission Planning and Zoning Commission at their November meeting, a vote of 8-0. There was one speaker for this item and no one in opposition. That concludes the presentation. I'll now entertain any questions from the council.
Thank you. Questions?
Move the item.
We do have a speaker on the,
Okay.
I assume he's available for questions.
Madam Mayor, the speaker has not joined Zoom.
Okay, well, we have a motion by Mrs. Thurm, a second by Dr. Wells. This is for the, let's see, which part? H1. Mrs. Hoffman,
Yes.
Mr. Holston,
Yes.
Dr. Wells,
Yes.
Mrs. Johnson.
Yes.
I am a yes. Mrs. Abuzawader.
Yes.
Mr. Outling,
Yes.
Mrs. Thurm,
Yes.
and Mrs. Hightower.
Yes.
And that passes 9-0. I need a motion and the findings of fact for item H2,
Move the item.
moved by Mrs. Thurm, seconded by Ms. Abuzawader. Mrs. Thurm, would you read the statement of consistency?
The Greensboro City Council believes that its action to approve the zoning request for the property described as 5807 Westgate City Boulevard from County LB and County RS 40 to CD-C-M Conditional District Commercial Medium to be consistent with the adopted GSO 2040 Comprehensive Plan, and considers the action taken to be reasonable and in the public interest for the following reasons. The request is consistent with the comprehensive plan's future built form map and future land use map. The proposed CD-CM zoning district as condition limits negative impacts on adjacent properties and permits uses which fit the context of surrounding area. And 3, the request is reasonable due to the size, physical conditions, and other attributes of the area. It will benefit the property owner and surrounding community, and approval is in the public interest.
Thank you. So that has been moved and seconded. Mrs. Hoffman,
Yes.
Mr. Holston,
Yes.
Dr. Wells,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Yes.
I am a yes. Mrs. Abuzawader.
Yes.
Mr. Outling,
Yes.
Mrs. Thurm,
Yes.
and Mrs. Hightower.
Yes.
And that passes 9-0. Item H3 also requires a statement of consistency,
Move the item.
moved by Mrs. Thurm, seconded by Ms. Abuzawader. Mrs. Thurm?
The Greensboro City Council believes that its action to approve the zoning request for the property described as Westgate City Boulevard right-of-way from County LB Limited Business and Jamestown IND Industrial to City CM Commercial Medium to be consistent with the adopted GSO 2040 Comprehensive Plan, and considers the action taken to be reasonable and in the public interest for the following reasons. The request is consistent with the comprehensive plan's future built form map and future land use map. The proposed CM zoning district permits uses which also fit the context of surrounding area. The request is reasonable due to the size, physical conditions, and other attributes of the area. It will benefit the property owner and surrounding community, and approval is in the public interest.
Thank you. Mrs. Hoffman,
Yes.
Mr. Holston, Dr. Wells,
Yes.
Mrs. Johnson.
Yes.
I'm a yes. Mrs. Abuzawader.
Yes.
Mr. Outling,
Yes.
Mrs. Thurm,
Yes.
and Mrs. Hightower.
Yes.
And that passes 9-0. Item number H4 is a public hearing for the adoption of a land development ordinance text amendment, amending section 30-3-8.2 membership. Mr. Galante?
Great, thank you. Just real short and to the point on this particular text amendment, it does modify the land development ordinance language to clarify that the representatives that are appointed by City Council to the Historic Preservation Commission that are to represent that particular historic district are to either live in that district or own property in that district. This text amendment will have no impact on any of the members of the Historic Preservation Commission that have been appointed by City Council at this point.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Abuzawader, seconded by Mr. Holston. Mrs. Hoffman,
Yes.
Mr. Holston,
Yes.
Dr. Wells,
Yes.
Mrs. Johnson.
Yes.
I am a yes. Mrs. Abuzawader.
Yes.
Mr. Outling,
Yes.
Mrs. Thurm,
Yes.
and Mrs. Hightower.
Yes.
And that passes 9-0. Item number H5 is a public hearing for the adoption of a land development ordinance text amendment amending section -30-12-8.1 drainage open space for subdivisions.
Great, thank you. This amendment to the land development ordinance would allow vehicular access to an area that is designated as open space. It is in subdivisions actually being dedicated as drainage way and open space. To allow the vehicle access, there are 3 caveats to that allowance. And it will take the express review of our Department of Transportation, our Department of Parks and Recreation, and the Department of Water Resources to review those requests. The Department of Transportation will make sure that the request to have vehicular access in this drainage way and open space will enhance public safety and that no other practical method achieves the same level of access. Our Department of Parks and Recreation will review the request to make sure that the function of the drainage way and open space will not be harmed. And our Department of Water Resources will ensure that the review of the vehicle access in a drainage way and open space will not impact the drainage or increase downstream flooding. The Parks and Rec, the Parks and Rec Commission did review this request and they had some concerns. We took those concerns to the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting on November 15th. The Planning and Zoning Commission understood those concerns and thought with the 3-level of review that it would create options for development without sacrificing public benefits. This item is a public hearing before City Council tonight, and City Council has 3 options. They can either approve the ordinance change as I presented it, they may make edits, or they may deny this request. Thank you.
Thank you. Moved by Mrs. Thurm. Nope. Did you have a
I
question?
have a question.
Mrs. Thurm has a question.
Can you speak in a little more detail about the Parks and Rec concern? Because I share their concern that existing houses, existing property that people bought with the understanding that they were buying beside a protected greenway, that would stand, and all of a sudden we're changing the properties. Can you just clarify that for me? Because I do have some challenges with that aspect.
Yes, that will be 1 level of review for allowing vehicular access in these
Could we-
drainage.
Maybe hold on for a second. There's a noise that is pretty distracting. I apologize, Mrs. Thurm. Let's see if we can figure out what this is. Okay, I'm sorry, please continue.
As part of the review of the request, our Department of Parks and Recreation will ensure that the purpose of that dedication of that open space will be held if it were to be used for vehicular access. So that concern will be addressed as part of that review.
Okay, but does Parks and Rec have a veto over that? I mean, how is, I need to understand practically for a resident, how exactly will this work?
Yes, all 3 of those caveats must be met in order to provide vehicular access.
And so if I may interject, Councilmember Thurman, yes, Parks and Recs will have to approve of the change or modification before we allow the vehicular access. So in conjunction with the Department of Transportation and Water Resources, it would have to be a consensus among all the departments before vehicular access is allowed.
I hate to beat a dead horse here, but can somebody help me, help explain what's driving this change and why we're doing this? Because I still don't feel comfortable that a resident's understanding of what they bought is going to be carry forward. And I just have some real concerns from the resident standpoint.
Sure. So we have, as you can imagine, much of the economic development that is occurring now is occurring within property and sites that it's hard to navigate the needs of the development. And so we've had requests for properties for access to properties to be allowed if the denial of the original entry point, if that's denied by the North Carolina Department of Transportation. Okay. And so because there was a public safety concern that necessitated the need to deny the proposed entry access, we were then asked if we could look for a subsequent manner for that access to be granted. And so one of the manners is through some open space, but we wanted to maintain the integrity and the purpose of that open space. And so this was one way that we could do this. So we've had multiple requests from developers asking for us to be a little more creative about addressing economic development needs. And so what we determined is if the denial is made because of a public safety concern, then we would consider an alternate access point.
Okay, so we're not really talking about opening up lots of existing neighborhoods.
No.
This is looking
No.
forward for new development,
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
right.
That
Yes.
clarifies the point and helps me considerably. Thank you.
Mrs. Hightower?
Mhm.
You know, developers come, they bring big proposals. Microphone, sorry. Thank you. They come and bring these proposals, and they incorporate open space in their proposals. Are you saying that they then want to take it back when they're after the fact, after they've submitted something and gotten it approved, and then all of a sudden it just doesn't work for them for whatever reason, and then they want to take it back to have cars go through?
No, it's really not the developer's decision. We will only consider requests if our our North Carolina Department of Transportation has denied an access point because it could create public safety hazards. And then if there is a way that the city could approve a secondary access, and if that secondary access is through open space or drainage way, that is when we would consider this.
Right.
So it is not something that they bring to us originally and we approve it. It's only because there has been a denial because of a public safety concern.
Well, would continual access through a drainage way create some kind of future impediment?
It could if we don't allow the consensus of the three departments we talked about. If we just openly said, sure, you can have it, but the reason we want those three departments at the table is to make sure that we don't create any stormwater concerns, or we want to make sure that we maintain, the integrity of the intent of that being open space and drainage way. So there is a lot of conversation that happens to make sure we can do this without creating future problems.
And finally, one question, is private neighborhood cars, or is it just city access to do this, for us to do work? Or is for the neighborhood to be able to drive through?
It is for people that need access to that property or that development, for them to be able to access that, yes. So not necessarily a through street that, a lot of public cars would come through, but certainly for those people that want to access that development, yes.
Oh, thank you. Doesn't sound like a good idea. Thank you.
Dr. Wells?
Second.
Dr. Wells and moves it, and Mrs. Johnson is the second. Mrs. Hoffman?
Yes.
Mr. Holston?
Yes.
Dr. Wells?
Yes.
Mrs. Johnson?
Yes.
I am a yes. Mrs. Abusawader?
Yes.
Mr. Outling,
Yes.
Mrs. Thurm,
Yes.
and Mrs. Hightower.
Yes.
And that passes 9-0. Thank you. Item number H6 is a public hearing for a resolution closing a portion of Brevard Street and a portion of Gay Terrace, the Masonic and Eastern Star Home of North Carolina, Inc., and Spring Garden Copeman LLC. We do have one speaker signed up, but Mr. Galante, if you could give us an overview?
Great, thank you, Mayor. Yes, this request is for a street closing, a portion of Bavard Street and a portion of Gay Terrace. Currently, the portion of Bavard Street does not have a street in it. It is undeveloped. Just a reminder that in order for the city of Greensboro to close public right-of-ways, we must make two findings. First one is that it is not contrary to the public interest and that no one owning property in the vicinity of the street will be denied reasonable means of ingress or egress. Our technical review committee did recommend approval, and the Planning and Zoning Commission recommended approval at their November meeting on a vote of 8-0. There are several conditions associated with this request, and they are related to the construction of a city standard turnaround at the end of Gay Terrace, where the street closing will terminate. The fire department is requesting the relocation of a fire hydrant that is located along the portion of street to be closed. And the applicant will need to record a plat to combine all this property together so it can be developed with the property to the north.
Question. Who pays to have the fire hydrant moved? Is that the applicant?
The applicant will.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Move the item.
Moved by Mrs. Abusawader. Did we?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
Has that been moved already?
No, ma'am, but we do have the speaker if you want to allow, he's in favor.
I can't hear you.
Second. I apologize.
Okay.
That was the last.
That's quite all right. Keep us on our toes. Moved by Ms. Abusawader and seconded by Mrs. Johnson. Mrs. Hoffman,
Yes.
Mr. Holston,
Yes.
Dr. Wells,
Yes.
Mrs. Johnson.
Yes.
I am a yes. Mrs. Abusawader, Mr. Outling,
Yes.
Mrs. Thurm,
Yes.
and Mrs. Hightower.
Yes.
And that passes 9-0. Now we move on to the general business portion of our agenda. Item I.1, resolution to approve amended boundaries to the impact zone map of the Economic Development Incentive Program guidelines.
Is there somebody here I could get some
Yes.
information on this?
Yeah, Ms. Saul.
And our economic development manager, Marshall Yandel, he's on by Zoom. So
Yes.
Marshall,
Can y'all, I shared the screen. Can you see the screen there? Okay, that's that's in your agenda packet. That's the recommended impact zones. And I met with you all about this. These impact zones, just kind of give you a real quick overview of them again for this meeting. These impact zones were adopted in July 2015 to the Economic Development Incentive Policy to help encourage growth in certain areas of the city. Projects looking to locate in these impact zones are eligible to receive enhanced incentives. The eligibility criteria also, as it relates to average wage, is also reduced if the company is considering a location in one of these impact zones. In March of this year, there was an additional incentives that were introduced and council approved. Companies that would locate anywhere in the city are eligible to receive an additional $250 per job if they hire someone that's a permanent resident in these impact zones. When we originally adopted these zones, they were intended to be reviewed every few years. And so these adjustments, we looked at the analysis of economic distress using census data on the 85 tracts in the city of Greensboro. So again, this does not necessarily limit council in what they could offer. in terms of, or authorize in terms of economic development incentive. It just helps guide decision-making and as well as guide the Chamber of Commerce when negotiating for incentives. So happy to answer any questions you may have about it.
Any questions?
Okay, no, I'm good. I just wanted, I couldn't remember, and I just wanted for me, so you just expanded the borders, basically, Marshall, because some of, I couldn't hear a lot of what you were saying.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. I know
Can you
you're
hear me
not-
now a little better?
Yeah, but that's okay. I know you're not,
Better.
you're not, yeah,
Move the item.
yeah. So I just wanted to ensure that we were expanding the border, but,
We have, the borders would be adjusted in some areas. So they moved over in some areas of town and retracted in other areas. Yep. So that's true.
okay. Thank you. Thank you.
That was moved by Mr. Holston, seconded by Dr. Wells. Mrs. Hoffman,
Yes.
Mr. Holston,
Yes.
Dr. Wells,
Yes.
Mrs. Johnson.
Yes.
I'm a yes. Mrs. Abuzawader, Mr. Outling,
Yes.
Mrs. Thurm,
Yes.
and Mrs. Hightower.
Yes,
That passes 9-0. Item number I.2 and 3 will be read to get together. Ordinance in the amount of $5,299,410 to amend funding for the Camp Burton Water and Sewer Utilities Project, and item I.3, resolution approving bid in the amount of $5,267,309.20 and authorizing execution of contract 2020-007A with Jimmy R. Lynch and Sons for the Camp Burton Water Main Project.
Second.
Moved by Dr. Wells, seconded by Mrs. Thurm. Mrs. Hoffman,
Yes.
Mr. Holston,
Yes.
Dr. Wells,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Yes.
I am a yes. Mrs. Abuzawader.
Yes.
Mr. Outling,
Yes.
Mrs. Thurm,
Yes.
and Mrs. Hightower.
yes.
That passes 9-0. We now have I.3. Moved by Ms. Abuzawader.
Second.
Seconded by Dr. Wells. Mrs. Hoffman,
Yes.
Mr. Holston. Dr. Wells,
Yes.
Mrs. Johnson.
Yes.
I am a yes. Mrs. Abuzawader.
Yes.
Mr. Outling,
Yes.
Mrs. Thurm,
Yes.
and Mrs. Hightower.
Yes,
And that passes 9-0. We now move on to item I.4, which is a resolution approving a contract in the amount of $2,600,000 with Hazen and Sawyer PC for the Southeast Feeder Main Design Contract.
move the item.
Moved by Mrs. Hightower, seconded by Ms. Abuzawader. Mrs. Hoffman,
Yes.
Mr. Holston,
Yes.
Dr. Wells.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, I am a yes.
Yes.
Mrs. Abuzawader,
Yes.
Mr. Outling,
Yes.
Mrs. Thurm,
Yes.
and Mrs. Hightower.
Yes,
Thank you. I got a little distracted. I hit no by mistake. I was trying to figure out how to turn it to a yes. So could you have my vote reflect a yes, please? Thank you. Item number I.5 is an ordinance enacting Chapter 4, Section 4.9 of the Greensboro Code of Ordinances, extension of licensed premises. Quick overview.
So ACM Trey Davis is going to give us an overview on that.
Thank you, Mayor and members of council, and I'll touch on just a little bit of it, and Attorney Watts will talk about some of the legalities. Actually, this is an opportunity that the city will adopt something that the state has sent down so that we can handle the process of extension of premises, something that we were starting to assist businesses who were extending their premises back in the summer. and during COVID time. And so Attorney Watt, some of the legal things, I won't try to jump into those.
The legal things are pretty simple. It's authorized by the legislature to do and within, the policy options of the city. So.
Thank you. And this is really something that we've been doing all along, and it will give business owners some security that if they want to go out and invest more in their outside space, that it'll be a long-term investment. So I think this is a really good idea. Do we have a motion?
Move the item.
Moved by Mr. Holston, seconded by Ms. Abuzawader. I am a yes. Mrs. Hoffman,
Yes.
Mr. Holston,
Yes.
Dr. Wells,
Yes.
Mrs. Johnson.
Yes.
I'm a yes. Mrs. Abuzawader.
Yes.
Mr. Outling,
yes,
Mrs. Thurm,
Yes.
and Mrs. Hightower.
Yes.
And that passes 9-0. Item number I.6 is an ordinance enacting chapter 26, article, is that 11? 11 of the Greensboro Code of Ordinances to be titled Social District. Brief
Move the
overview.
item.
Madam Mayor, once you have an overview, I have some concerns.
Okay. Well, keep in mind, it's been moved by Mrs. Johnson. Can you give us an overview?
City Attorney Watts can give us an overview of that one.
Chuck, I don't think your mic's on.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I punched it twice. Yeah, this is also something that's been authorized by the legislature recently and something that staff was interested in doing. So can be done.
Mrs. Hightower, you had a question?
Yes, so I heard what you said, Chuck, but I read through it today. And one of the things that concerned me is it talks about roving. So basically, I can be at one restaurant and eat and drink and leave that restaurant, take my drink with me to another restaurant and have more drinks. And I think that's a recipe for a disaster, because does restaurant B know what happened at restaurant A? And where is the control mechanism in that? We're getting ready to vote on a safety ordinance where we're talking about restaurants, that have had problems. To me, we're setting them up again to kind of be in a problem situation where this could occur. And it doesn't seem like it's not a lot of regulation. I understand people want to have social distance. They want to, we all want to be social. But I think when we say we have concerns and we're going to have a safety ordinance where we talk about violent acts that have happened at nightclubs and places that sell alcohol. And now we're saying, oh, but let's have a social area where we can just walk around and take our alcohol from place to place. And it's not very, to me, it doesn't seem contained. And so I share some concerns about that. I don't know how who's going to regulate this? Where does ALE fall into the mist? And I know the state does a lot of stuff sometimes I don't understand anyway. So
Mayor, if I can help. So just to give some clarity, Councilwoman Hightower, very good question. Is something that we've actually been working with the businesses that are inside the footprint of the identified map for the social district area. Two things to address one of your questions. There are certain time parameters for the social districting hours, which are from 12 p.m. To 9 p.m. Also, within that, there are certain pieces of the rules that govern this particular ordinance that the establishments have to abide by. So, for example, what you described, if a person purchases an alcoholic drink from one establishment, they can't walk into the other establishment with that drink. And so there are a few small innuendos within this ordinance. There has to be a 16 ounce, no larger than a 16 ounce cup, which is labeled with the identification of Greensboro. I may mess this up and don't get the verbiage exact, but basically it identifies Greensboro social district, and also a message to drink safely. But again, I can't take that drink into another establishment. That particular cup has to be thrown away, and you'd have to make another purchase at another restaurant. But back to your concerns regarding safety, there will be signage, ample signage in the area, and that is part of the ordinance as well. And our law enforcement and our public safety, all of our public safety are aware of where those parameters are.
And so I hear what you're saying, but when I read the resolution, it talks about roving. So you can rove around with that cup.
Right, only within the footprint of the social districting map, which we've identified. We were very careful to make sure that footprint was as safe as possible. As you can see in that footprint, it is only in the downtown area.
And that's the other thing. It's only in the downtown areas. I know people are gonna get upset, but we're looking at targeting areas that are outside the downtown area when we talk about the safety ordinance, even though there's been some violent acts downtown as well. So it's just a concern for me, because I think people are gonna think, as I read it, oh, well, I can just get my drink here. I'm gonna go talk to my buddy over there. He's having a hot dog at the other restaurant, and I'm just gonna go over there. Well, I mean, to me, this seems more like I'm gonna trust the person to say, throw his cup away. But if he's paid $15 for a drink, he ain't gonna throw it away. He gonna drink it. So I just think this is setting up a recipe for disaster. I'm not gonna support it because I still have some concerns about it. You know, I think we put a lot of emphasis on alcohol in certain areas. We allow certain things, but then it's problematic in other areas in the community. And I just think we need a little bit tighter regulation. I'd feel a little bit more comfortable if it was from my perspective.
So this will be our first social district. You know, we could have them in other parts of town, but this is the one where, you know, we have a lot of people. We also have the downtown ambassadors. We have the bike squad, and the cups will have to be standardized cups, which will be provided by downtown Greensboro to the businesses within the social district. So in order to leave one place, you have to have a specific cup that shows that you are in the social district and that's a drink.
So let me ask this too, and I may have mentioned this to you. I don't know if you answered me today, but if I want to leave Restaurant A and go over to Center City Park, which is downtown, is that okay?
Did you say to Center City? Center City Park is not in the footprint for the social district map, no.
But you know, it's a hangout spot. I mean,
no,
people
you
like to
can't.
go there and gather with one another. I mean, it's a great place to go, but I'm just saying.
There will be signs in every part of the footprint. Center City Park is not in that footprint, so there will be signs notifying persons that alcohol is not permitted in those areas or outside of the social districting identified area.
So are we using this as just maybe a test case, or is this something that's going to be implemented until?
So obviously within, just as the mayor just said, this is our first this is our first social districting area. And I don't want to say it's just a downtown thing, but we've identified a footprint downtown. This is something that we looked at models from other areas, and other areas have adopted the same ordinance. And so again, this is something that we're adopting now. As anything else, you know, any other ordinance that we adopt, then we always evaluate it to see its impact, how well it's working, and the effectiveness. Also, any safety concerns that might arise.
And according to the new legislation, you could actually have the social district from 12 to midnight. And we opted to keep it at 9 o'clock, kind of as a test case, just so there weren't people roaming around or waiting in club lines. And if we felt we wanted to roll that back even further, we could, or we could roll it up. But for right now, our focus is at 9 o'clock instead of going to midnight.
Yeah, and I appreciate that consideration, but I just think we're just opening ourselves up right here with something like giving people an opportunity just to kind of walk around with alcohol in their hand. At one point in time, you couldn't do that with open containers and things of that nature. And it seems like we're just becoming more and more loose with it. And I think that's a concern. We allow a lot of things with alcohol, but we criminalize marijuana to the point that people get thrown in jail for years. So, and I get it. I understand alcohol is legal, but I just think in this particular instance, it just does not sound like something that I think, and maybe you should go to 6 o'clock. I don't know, but people can get drunk at 9 o'clock. So I don't know what will stop them from doing that, but I just see some concerns maybe nobody else sees, so.
Thank you. So we do have a motion. Oh, Dr. Wells, did you want to say something?
It says a map. I never did see the map of what area we were talking about. It says here, it refers to a map.
And we can provide a hard copy of the map to you if we need to, but it's
Where tell me what streets.
okay. Basically, it's around our, so Green Street is a part of it. And it goes down your Market. If you think about a square, Green to Market down to Davie, turn left. It does incorporate LeBauer Park, but it does not incorporate Center City Park. And then it goes back to Elm Street down toward the Tanger Center. And back again towards.
And there was a map that was
LeBauer
circulated.
LeBauer Park, but it doesn't have the city park.
Doesn't have Center City Park, correct, but it does have LeBauer Park. Mhm.
I'm thinking about this now. I'm thinking about.
And we made these decisions in collaboration with DG Downtown, Greensboro Downtown Parks Incorporated, with our GPD officers, with Downtown Greensboro, with our staff, our transportation staff. So this was a collaborative decision. It was not just made in a silo.
Yeah, I'd really like to hear more on this personally. I think just hearing about this tonight, just being dropped in the agenda. We had no work session on it. We had nothing. And now you say that LeBauer is included, but not Center City. They both two parts under the same management establishment.
Karen, LeBauer Park, you've got a restaurant that opens onto LeBauer from the cultural center, and you have 2 kiosks serving food and alcohol, and you've got a restaurant then on the other side on Elm Street. So, I think that's the reason for LeBauer.
Yeah, there are 2 of the kiosks that serve dinner, food, and alcohol.
But Center City Park is sandwiched in between those 2. So B. Christopher's is here and LeBauer's here. So again, what's stopping people from roaming into Center City Park? And I think I know why Center City Park wasn't included. I'm currently not going to say out loud, but I think I know why. I just still think that this is not the path I think we ought to be looking at going down. I think we got a lot of serious things we need to consider in this city. And when we talk about violence, we talk about violent crime, we talk about where it happens, we talk about why it happens, and we associate it with alcohol and other, drugs and so forth. And I think we just need to be a little bit more responsible in this. I mean, maybe the social district is fine. Other cities, it probably works fine. I don't know. But I know this city is really being asked to control our violence. And we're getting ready for the next item to implement a safety plan for just some of those things. It looks a little discriminatory. in those bases as well for me. And so, again, I can't. support.
Understood. Mr. Holston, did you have a question or comment?
Probably a series of questions for, in general, this is slated to begin when?
Yeah, we hope we could begin in March, around March 1. There's a few logistical things as far as making sure that we've got proper signage, if approved, as well as ordering of the materials. The cups are really important to the whole process, so that, you know, if people are drinking and walking in the areas, it is identifiable with a cup specific to the businesses. Again, that's specific to the area that we've identified for the social district, as well as a stamp that would be, or some type of labeling by each individual business, so that you don't have a deep duplication of a person drinking alcohol, taking it, buying it at another location.
Okay, and the time frame that this ordinance would be available by day is it from 12 noon until 9 p.m.?
Yes, yes, sir.
And there's going to be GPD presence?
So there won't be GPD assigned necessarily per the particular hours for this location, but GPD, those are the times that you have your GPD downtown squad that will be working.
And then going to Councilwoman Hightower's question about being able to purchase a beverage in one bar and walking to another bar, that is or is not allowed?
It is not allowed. So again, and in the process of educating the businesses who might participate, part of the ordinance, and this is what we've adopted from the state rules that govern this particular ordinance, or the philosophy of it is that you cannot take another beverage that you purchase from one restaurant into another.
And if I purchase a beverage at a bar and walk into another establishment that's not a bar, Clothier or something else?
That is something that we discuss and we work through. If you are a clothing establishment, then from my understanding, you can allow that. However, we can work with them so that they can maybe post something. That's, for example, if it's your business and you decide you don't want persons inside of your establishment with the alcoholic drinks, then you can definitely post that and identify.
Okay. And another question, it really just hit me as I think about what's happening. What are we doing for restrooms and porter service?
That's something that I have not worked through, but we can definitely continue to work with DGI as well as the downtown businesses who are taking part.
So okay, all right. Okay.
Restrooms would be
Outling has a question.
bars where drinks are purchased.
Mr. Outling?
Thank you. To the points raised by Councilwoman Wells and Hightower, ACM Davis, can you address the substance of those points and kind of give context for why the map looks the way that it does? For those who may not have had an opportunity to look at it, it's not very contiguous. And I imagine there may be circumstances where people might not know all of the contours or fully be able to understand the signs, such that they could be doing something that is not allowed, that they think is in fact allowed, including walking through Center City Park with a beverage on way to LeBauer Park. So can you address the points that Ms. Hightower and Councilwoman Wells raised?
Sure, I'll try to make sure I pull it together in one response. And myself, Assistant City Manager Soel, and a few other staff work with, as she noted, Downtown Greensboro Incorporated, GDPI, who's not a city organization, but works very closely with us, as well as we had a few meetings with other downtown businesses that we felt like might participate. And so in our attempt to identify a footprint in the area that we felt like could be both safe and consistent with locations that we'd be participating, then that's how we arrived at the map, as well as areas that we felt like, again, with our public safety components, that were the safest to arrive at. Does that address the questions? I'm not sure if it does.
Yeah, if you could give some more specifics in terms of the criteria and why some areas were included and others were not excluded or not included, notwithstanding the fact that they're continuous. And, to put a finer point on it, I'll tell you at least what I've heard, and it may be something to which Councilwoman Hightower was referencing. The exclusion of Center City Park, which oftentimes has persons who are experiencing homelessness in that park, not being able to drink there, but LeBauer Park, which has a different demographic that oftentimes uses that park, drinks being allowed there. And so I'll tell you, certainly, I have had a couple of people raise that to me over the weekend. So I think it'd be helpful to kind of expand on why certain areas were included specifically and others weren't. Now, I understand it was a deliberative process with, stakeholders, but if you could provide more color on that, it may be helpful.
I think that's specific to LeBauer Park. Again, that is an entity that's separate from the city. We consulted with them as we wanted to make sure we consulted with as many businesses and entities in that area. As I think Councilwoman Hoffman noted earlier, there are two locations, two kiosks right there at that location that are in proximity to LeBauer Park that make it accessible. I think one of the locations that Councilwoman Hightower identified earlier is actually across a street. But again, back to your point, the locations that were identified on the map, again, were locations that we felt like and that would be consistent with those that will be participating in the particular downtown social districting opportunity.
Mrs. Thurm?
How do we plan on, how do we plan on addressing individuals that, as Councilwoman Hightower alluded to, maybe purchase their drink at B. Christopher's and cut through Center City Park with their drink in hand to get to Tanger? Let's just use that as an example. How will we deal with taking that drink outside of, who's going to say something? How does that work?
So in our education process, as we walk through it, one, our businesses who agree to be a part of and participate, those that do purchase the cups and participate in the social districting, we have their levels of responsibility, as well as not only our public safety who may be in the area, as well as our ambassadors can remind people of the parameters that have been identified. Quite naturally, if you are outside of the social districting area, then the current state laws apply as it relates to alcohol consumption in those areas.
And I'll add, we realize this will be more of an educational effort at the beginning. And so this is not to make it a punitive, behavior if someone is found outside of the social district with the drink. It would be more of informing and educating them. And we're partnering with the DGI and their ambassadors, not just on this, but in other efforts to make sure that we all understand what the expectations are and that we are equipping them with how we want them to approach people and educate them if that happens.
Just one other thing about LeBauer Park is you've got Cafe Europa, which kind of opens on to LeBauer Park. So you've got Cafe Europa and the kiosks. Mrs. Hightower, then Dr. Wells.
I think go to.
Well, my question, when I first read this about the district, I said, well, the state is allowing this. But now I'm wondering, is this a request of you think for our citizens or for the restaurant owners? Now, because I was talking to one of the they're not called ambassadors the other day. And she was telling me how she had broken up a little almost fight. And the question was asked, well, what was going on? She said, well, they'd had a little more too much to drink. This was in the day And so we say from 12 to 9, the folk can walk with their drinks. And I don't know, because I've never drunk, so I don't know, but I think most of the people I see get a little bit different in their thinking. And we've had so many incidences of we say crime or things that were not good in these restaurants. And most of the times, if they look back at it, they said the people were inebriated and they got out of sorts. I don't know whether, because I thought about it at first, I thought, well, maybe that's all right for us to do that since the state is allowing it. But I don't know about people walking up and down the street with drinks and feeling free. They can drink all they want to till 9 o'clock. By 9 o'clock, they may be really out of it. And I don't know if we have enough ambassadors and enough policemen to keep up with everybody that's not thinking right. So I'm having second and third thoughts about that, because we're trying to make our city safer. And I don't think, because the ones that would be doing that were the ones who really liked what they were drinking, and they might continue to drink and then get so they don't think right. So I'm thinking about this.
Mrs. Hightower?
So, and of course, I'm still a no on everything. And, but since Mr. Outland went on and said out loud what I was trying to be politically correct about, not saying, but there is the homeless population that does frequent Center City Park. And they do it day and night. They're there at 12, they're there at 9. And I know many have complained about them, and they've complained about them being in altered states, whether it's involving alcohol. And so now the ambassadors, which I knew was going to happen, the ambassadors are going to be out there intervening with the homeless population. I knew that was going to happen. That's just the first piece of it. And now it's going to be the second piece when they incorporate the social district. And so people who walk up and down the street and, have a drink and they say, oh, shoot, it's time to go to my play. It's getting to be 8, but they haven't finished their drink. And then they throw the cup in the trash. Well, somebody could just easily pick that up and take a sip out of it. I mean, I'm just telling you, I'm seeing a recipe here for disasters. I think we really haven't thought this through very well. And then, Mr. Davis, you said there's some things you hadn't thought about addressing either. I mean, do we take that drink into a nice little vintage place that's got clothing in it? And then if somebody come in and spill something on the people's clothing they're trying to sell. I mean, do they say, okay, all clothing places prohibit no drinks walking in, but you take away the whole aspect of roving. When you say roving, that means people are aimlessly going places. And so I don't know if the person getting a drink is going to be given a map and say, okay, now you got this drink here. If you decide you can only go here, 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 and here. Well, the adult mind. We all have our own minds. We do what we want to do sometimes. We want people to follow the rule. And for the most part, everybody does follow the rule. I just think that there is where I see some potential for a disaster. And I would like for us to really revisit this, maybe take some other time and look at it. But that's fine if you all are prepared to vote tonight.
Mayor, if I can, just to.
Yes,
give-
and then Mrs. Hoffman.
Okay, I'm
Go ahead.
sorry. I'll wait for Ms. Hoffman. I want to give 2 examples. that
Mrs.
may help.
Hoffman?
Yeah, I just wanted to make the point. Sort of, if you think about the North Carolina Folk Festival and then 3 years of the National, in essence, that was kind of a social district, or is. So if you sort of keep that in mind, then I think it puts this in another light in comparison with something else that we've done successfully downtown.
Mayor, actually, I was gonna, maybe that will help paint a picture just as what Councilwoman Hoffman just indicated. So for example, when we have like Fun Fourth or our festivals downtown, those are all atmospheres that we ultimately have the special event permit that allow this type of alcohol consumption and for people to walk around. We've not had any issues with those. I also want to note that ABC Commission as well as ALE have reviewed this particular language that we have in our ordinance, and they have no issues with it.
Madam Mayor.
Yeah, yeah, Mrs. Johnson made the motion. Is the
Second.
second by Mrs. Abusawader. Mrs. Hoffman,
Yes.
Mr. Holston,
Yes.
Dr. Wells, Mrs. Johnson.
Yes.
I am a yes. Mrs. Abusawader,
Yes.
Mr. Outling,
Yes.
Mrs. Thurm,
Yes.
and Mrs. Hightower.
No.
So that passes 6-2. We will now move on to
7-2.
7-2, I'm sorry. Item number I.7 is a resolution supporting adoption of city safety plan, city safety review board. Mr. Davis?
Yes, thank you, Mayor and members of council. This is something that we worked on for a number of months now. This goes way back to our history of trying to address and come up with a way to bring some safety to our nighttime establishments that have experienced violence. As some of you know, we started out looking at a potential ordinance after a few meetings and some pretty lively discussions with our community to include business owners and the like. We arrived at something that we've identified as more of a safety plan and not necessarily an ordinance. This safety plan will utilize, basically in a nutshell, existing resources. But ultimately at its core, I hope that you all will see that this is an opportunity that city staff can communicate directly with locations that are experiencing consistent incidents of violence. I know there's been some healthy discussion around this particular item relevant to businesses feeling like this could penalize them. But I really would like you all to see that this is an opportunity that we can engage with businesses that have specific issues of violence. And so that we can help them in those scenarios.
We do have one speaker. I believe it is Michael Boyer, and you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I am a resident of Greensboro, but I'm also an attorney to a number of stakeholders in this community that portend to be pretty negatively impacted by the implementation of this proposed plan. And I love that Councilperson Hightower has kind of built up the context for where we are right now. Madam Hightower, I disagree with your conclusion about the social district, but I do agree with the notion that this is pretty facially discriminatory in intent. So we are talking about a permit with the social drinking district that will be owned and held by the city, which would exempt from this proposed plan all of those businesses that would be contiguous to the social district. If any of the violence that is, claimed to be a problem here were to occur within those boundaries, as would exempted the Coliseum and certain other property affiliated with the city or city stakeholders. So there are about 5 issues that I want to quickly roll through as my time dwindles down. Number one, as the attorney has already stated to you, the public roundly rejected this, stakeholders roundly rejected this in July of this year. And then number 2, and perhaps more concerning, is that the premise for why this is here is supported by 0 findings of fact. There is basically a conclusion that operates as, I guess, a veiled fact, but there's no nexus drawn between the holding of an on-premise retail ABC permit and rising crime rates. Number three, we don't have any standards recited in the draft available to the public that show what success would be. And I would ask you to look to my item number 2 to inform why that might be. We don't really even know what basket we're shooting at. Number 4, the proposed scope is unconscionable. We go from acts of violence to city code issues, fire, building, occupancy standards, you name it, health department. And we create a safe operation designation that requires 18 consecutive months of 0 incidents. And I would say finally, legally, I'm uniquely qualified, and that's why I'm here on behalf of the stakeholders that have asked me to be here to speak on matters of beverage alcohol. And I do think that what you're proposing is preempted right now by Chapter 18B, Section 100. And I also think that this makes the city ripe for a 1983 claim, because based on what we're seeing, it appears that the city actually knows where in the city issues are arising, but chooses to include everyone in this designation. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. City Attorney?
Sure. With all due respect, I would disagree with the legal arguments were made at the end. And I do say that after having been the chair of the board of the ABC Commission, ABC organization in Durham County for years, and having a fair amount of experience in the alcohol legal enforcement piece, the suggestion that this is a 1983 action would require that there's somehow discrimination going on. Constitutional violation of rights. None of that I can discern here. There's certainly a basis for a rational basis distinction to be made. And that's, I think, what you're doing here if you choose to do it.
And I would like to say that some of the original meetings that we had were really looking at an ordinance that would start new regulations. And really what staff has done is they spent a lot of time looking at existing ordinances and come up with a safety plan on how we can react to certain issues. So there is no, there's no increased cost. It is something that we already have on the books, but there is, if there is an issue, there is a safety board where people can come and speak to the city about what we expect and best practices. We had a meeting as late as yesterday afternoon. I think people understand that this is not an ordinance, that it is not going to cost them more money. It doesn't require them to do anything, but it tells them what to expect if something does happen. Mrs. Thurm?
Yes. I hate to let us striving for perfection get in the way of something that's good. And overall, I do feel like this is a good policy. I would like us to pursue whether or not this should really exempt city functions, city property. I have the utmost faith right now in those that are, Matt Brown and the Coliseum and the Tanger Center and all that. But at the same time, those individuals that are in charge now are not going to be in charge forever, because at some point they'll retire. And while city functions now, with current management in place, we have police there already, we have EMS there already. I'm looking longer term and thinking, do we have that codified anywhere? I don't think.
Can I answer that? Because I've heard that question before, and there was some concern from Ball. I had a comment, as the mayor said, I had a conversation as late as yesterday about concerns about city, state, and government facilities being exempt. But I will say all of those facilities, and I can speak to city facilities. Let's, for example, the Coliseum. If there are incidents of violence or continued incidents of violence at those locations, then we will evaluate them at this measure and even higher. So I think there's some confusion as it relates to thinking that these locations will be exempt and not receive the level of attention. And let me go back to the whole premise of this safety plan. The safety plan is to keep businesses open. So we can have 100 people come up to give compelling statements about how we are hurting businesses. This is an opportunity for city staff to connect with businesses that might be experiencing violence. I can speak to my own experience in law enforcement, being a commander in areas and responding to locations. And one death of a young person at a night establishment is enough. And so ultimately, as a city government, we have a responsibility to have some type of mechanism in place that we can communicate and help people come to a safe environment and a safe place for our city.
I agree with your statements completely. And if we hold the city facilities to that standard now, then I think there's no harm in this policy of saying that and including those facilities. The other piece of this is I would love to see us offer this as a proactive response so that a restaurant prior to ever, or a bar prior to ever having an event can ask for this panel to be convened and ask their advice on the front side. So as you said, one person's violent act is one too many. Then I would like to see this broadened so that we can do it proactively on the front side before there is any act of violence and offer that as a support mechanism to our restaurants and bar owners.
Mrs. Hightower, then Mr. Outling, and then Ms. Mabuza-Waiter.
Okay. Thank you. Ms. Durham kind of touched on what I was getting ready to ask, because what the gentleman kind of brought up was concerning to me when he said city would be having permits. And so we wouldn't be looking at that. Are we including all establishments everywhere across the city? Yes, we talked about Coliseum and all that, but I'm talking about you just did a social district. So now, are they incorporated in this?
This plan, this safety plan is a city safety plan. So this is for any location within the city of Greensboro.
So that none of them will be excluded in this if they have a problem. Because I think one of the issues that I see that I don't want to happen is that it boils down to, let's just be real. Black clubs are having more problems. And so some of that you see more violence at for whatever reason. Some of them say, and I don't really know if it's alcohol or not. I mean, I hear both sides of the argument, but as you say, we're not trying to shut businesses down. And so that's a concern for me, that we have certain establishments in certain other areas of town that we would maybe target, and then other areas that don't feel it. And so if it's all inclusive, then I think that's the first thing we need to make aware. I mean, I was all for supporting it because I want all places to be safe. One of the things you did do that I did ask is that you added a person who has an interest in the restaurant or alcohol sales or nightclub to your review team, because I think that's critically important, that while you have 4 city inspectors on this, then I think we also need to have that perspective as well. And so I think the mayor, you told me today you spoke to Tiffany with the bar association, bar, not the attorney bar, but the other bar.
North Carolina Bar Association.
Right. So I
might
don't
be
know.
able to help us
Right. to
find
help us
somebody in Greensboro.
Right, to help us with this, find somebody here, so we have that perspective on it as well, because I don't want it to be a one-sided perspective. When you're left out of the process, a lot of times the process hurts you.
Councilwoman, what you pose is a very good question. And sometimes we try to avoid it, but I'll give you an example. And in some ways, you're right, but I think the issue is the gap in communication. There was a young African-American male who had a night location in our city. He had experienced several incidents of violence by way of a community leader, a connection. We went to lunch, we had a conversation. I gave him some advice of some things to do, put him in contact with a few people to include the Bar Owners Association or other folks that he could have some advice from. He made some adjustments to the type of schedule he had at his location. He also made a few other adjustments, and he's had no issues. Now, I'm not saying that's the plan, but I'm acknowledging what you're saying, Councilwoman Hightower. And I think what this plan does, it allows us to close that gap to sometimes people who don't have the avenues of communication with, whether it is GPD, whether it's the Fire Marshal's Office, whether it's our ABC enforcement, or other entities that they might have adverse encounters with or communication when they have negative situations take place. But I think the real meat of this policy and this plan is to close that gap in communication, allow business owners to have those communications with city officials and officials that govern these issues, and they can help them.
And one other thing, let me ask you this, because this came up too in a couple of the meetings. Some of the bar owners were saying that a lot of times the spillover is sometimes from gas station, convenience stations, stores where people are kind of hanging out. Are we looking to look at those as well and evaluate some of those? Because I've heard repeatedly a couple locations that are not nightclubs, they aren't. And but they're across from a nightclub, and it's the people that are hanging out there, the issues happen, and there have been incidences there. But then the nightclub gets a bad rap because it's right in close proximity.
I agree. Those are some things that we continue to work on, or continue to work with legal to have those conversations and address those locations.
Yeah, because I think we got to be all inclusive if we're talking about, reducing violence. We got to start finding the root causes of this. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Outling, then Ms. Abuzawader, and then I have some comments.
Thank you. I think for council members who may have read the policy, we may be able to follow this discussion, but I'm not sure if someone is just in tonight or not aware of what the policy says, it's easy to understand what's going on. Mr. Davis or another person on staff, could you give a summary of the way the policy works and what it actually does?
Yes, so ultimately, if there is an incident and we've identified and defined what an act of violence is, if there's an incident of violence, then that establishment will be engaged, and that engagement would entail a notification that we would be initiating the board. The board discussion would be, again, with the business owner. Also, we've added a peer, as the mayor and Councilperson Hightower were discussing. We're talking with persons that are in that area. We don't want to just have these conversations with the business owners and not have someone in that discussion that's in that world. And so with that, the discussion would identify some of the issues or concerns that some of the members of the board or those that have been identified to be on the board would have. The business owner, bar owner, club owner, whatever it may be, would have an opportunity to describe their position and as they see the incident that's taking place. From that, there could be recommendations. There don't always have to be recommendations being made. After those recommendations are made, there'll be continued follow-up with the staff and the board that was formalized.
Thank you. And I think, going to the point that the speaker raised, the policy doesn't really go beyond or do anything in addition to what is already done from an enforcement perspective with regard to bars and restaurants, establishments that serve alcohol. And so, Mr. Davis, my understanding is that in terms of when this group will convene and make recommendations, it'll be after an act of violence sometimes, right? So it could be one act, it could be several acts. There's not criteria to establish when the board is going to convene and make recommendations. Is that right?
It would be after an act of violence, yes.
So would it be after every act of violence at any bar or restaurant, the group would convene and kind of start putting this in motion?
Yes, if you know, I think in subsection 2E of the policy, it indicates the identification of the acts of violence. And yes, after those acts of violence, then the location would be engaged.
Okay, because when I reviewed the provisions of the policy, it essentially says there's nothing that requires this board to get together or to take any action, but you're saying the way the policy works is if there's an act of violence at any of these establishments or the adjoining premises, this group is going to convene, determine whether or not to make recommendations, and then make recommendations.
I think it's, Trey, I think it's under the policy in section 3, subparagraph 1. Upon the occurrence of a violent incident in an applicable location, the city safety review board shall convene within 7 days.
Yes, it is. It's correct.
Okay. Is there criteria, going to the gentleman's comments, is there any kind of criteria or benchmarks for determining what the city will do when it meets?
Again, I go back to, as we started this process, some of the beginning drafts of what started as an ordinance did have additional penalties and fines. We learned pretty quickly that might not be the best approach as it relates to trying to build the type of relationship we're trying to build to keep businesses open. So as you can see by design, we do not have additional penalties in the particular plan, so as to be equitable and to be fair to all businesses.
Yeah, and that's kind of part of where I think there's an opportunity for improvement, is that there's no guidance, there's no clarity, there's nothing additive to explain what differently would flow from this process as compared to if the city enforced the actual rules that already exist. So for example, the city has, and it can, go to the ABC Commission and request that the ABC Commission and ALE open an investigation and move to suspend the license of an establishment that has served alcohol and has been a site for repeated violence. To me, this could be very helpful if there was an actual criteria that established when the city would make those requests of ABC, ALE. And so for me, I think, businesses are the backbone of our community, and we need to support them without making their jobs harder when we're not kind of adding value to the process. And, going to Councilwoman Thurm's point, and something that I've said last week and said to others, to me, this is continuing to focus on the wrong thing. It's another reactive process after an offense or a crime of violence has already happened, rather than taking those city resources that we're obviously willing to dedicate to this and being proactive, including as a resource to bars and restaurants, to strengthen their security plans and prevent crime from actually occurring. Third, in terms of the enforcements and the things that can be done, and I know, Mr. Davis, you haven't reviewed them, but it includes seeking a nuisance and other violations. Those already exist under state law. And so to me, it's a matter of why do we waste time mimicking something that's already in place when we could just enforce those laws as we should be doing. I'm for actually stopping the crime before it starts. And so I think we should be less reactive and have a real vision in being proactive and actually propose solutions in addition to that go to the root causes of crime. And I think, if Councilwoman Thurm is suggesting that this is something that we should do proactively, I'm in complete agreement. I think if you're singling out one industry, bars and restaurants, that when we looked at the data, when this process started, were definitely not the drivers of violent crime in our community. I think it's one thing if you're giving them an additional resource. I think it's a very different thing if you're applying additional regulation, additional scrutiny to them, and you're exempting out other businesses, which from a statistical perspective, have more incidences of crime, like convenience stores. You're exempting out government buildings, which includes the city and other buildings, which to Councilman Thurm's point, if we're going to have plans for them, we can get rid of the explicit exemption in the policy. And to me, this is, again, most principally and most centrally, it may be intended to make our community more safe, but almost by design, it is something that is reactive after violent crimes have occurred. And so I strongly think we should take the dedicated resources that we're willing to commit, be proactive and be a resource to bars and restaurants, help them develop security plans if they desire it, and also open that up to other businesses, including convenience stores, which on a statistical basis are equal, if not greater, likelihood of being the site of violent crime in our community.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to say that hearing about this review board for me has nothing to do with singling out businesses due to the increase in crime. I want to say I'm the only sitting council member who has ever had an establishment that had an ABC permit. And I think most everyone knows that I was totally against the ordinances that were talked about in previous months. I didn't feel that they were appropriate, and most everyone knew my stance on that. And we didn't want to, I didn't want to move forward with that. And I know that staff was asked by council to come back with something, and staff came back with this. And in all honesty, I believe we should give this a try. I want to make it very clear. I am not saying that bars and restaurants have anything to do with the increase in crime. I want to make that perfectly clear. I do believe that quite a few times there are aggravated assaults that occur in establishments that serve alcohol. I do know it becomes a little sensational in the media when there are incidents at venues that serve alcohol and establishments. But coming from my perspective, I would think that if there had been a violent episode at, say, my restaurant, when you apply for an ABC permit, and perhaps Mr. Outling didn't realize this, you have to go through a lot of hoops, and you have to, with the city, give a plan of action, and you have to, go through a lot of different boxes to check before you are even considered for that ABC permit. So when that happens, and then say you have an incident on your property, or you have an incident at your establishment, I think that should it get to the point that this goes before the ABC Commission, I think that the ABC Commission might take into consideration that you met with the Safety Review Board of the city that will also include someone from the service industry. Is my understanding correct, Mr. Davis?
Yes.
So we'll not only have different departments from the city to assist you, but also there will be one of your peers who will be, able to give their take on it as well. Sorry, we got to echo. So my feeling is that this is something that could actually help in the favor of someone who possibly may be brought up before the ABC Commission. And perhaps Mr. Watts may know a little bit more about that, but to show that this person who unfortunately did have something happen on their property has done everything in their power and to make sure it doesn't happen again. This could keep that business in business. And I don't want to be responsible for businesses being closed down. I think it certainly is going to help those establishments. Now, you talk about what is the city going to talk about? Well, I'm sure there are going to be recommendations. But as it states in the information we received, it is a recommendation. If they don't follow through and something else happens, that's really not going to look very good. If they follow through, it looks much better. So I suppose in a nutshell here, I really would like to give this a chance. I'm going to be watching it closely, and I know others will as well. But I certainly believe that, city staff, Mr. Davis, the chief, everybody has been in on this. We want our city to be the safest it can be. Are bars and restaurants the cause of our violent crime? No. I'll say it again. But I do believe that we want our businesses to stay in business. And those that do have permits, I think this is a good way to assist them with city resources as much as possible. And that is what I understood from researching this. So I certainly believe that it will be something that can help our citizens and our owners, business owners. Thank you.
Thank you. And I just want to say that this is something that has been a long process. We looked at possible ordinances, realized we had ordinances in place. It was a matter of putting best practices together. And I believe with what Ms. Abuzawader says, that if there is a place that gets into trouble, but they have said that they've been working with the city, they can avoid a nuisance abatement case. Nuisance abatement is something that's very serious because it pulls the ABC permit from that building permanently. So I think that when we have people who are willing to work with us, that it is a plus. I do want to talk about city-owned buildings and some of the differences. They have a significant number of police and third-party security on hand. For large events at the Coliseum, like the ACC tournament or large concerts, they have EMS on site. They have, in all of the buildings, they have got metal detectors, some of the most high-quality metal detectors and wands. They allow only clutch-size purses, I think 6 by 4 inches. And they look in the purses. They look for weapons, they look for drugs, they look for alcohol. So I think that our city buildings are really going above and beyond. And quite frankly, I don't know that there is a bar or restaurant that can meet the security that goes on in our city buildings. So I think that is one reason why we look at city buildings a little differently, like Tanger or the Coliseum, because of the high degree of security that they have on site already. One thing that I do think that we need further to look at, which has been brought up a number of times, is the promoter permits. And like Mrs. Thurm said, let's not let perfect get in the way of good. I think that this is good and that we need to come back and look at a few other items that were brought up today, because we said from the very beginning that this was going to be a safety plan. And I want to go on record of saying, I never said that bars and restaurants were responsible for the growing homicide rate. That was somebody else's spin. What we want to do is make people safe wherever they are. I want to know that when I'm out, I'm in a safe environment. I want to know that my children are in a safe environment, and whatever we can do to foster that in any type of business, I think it's our responsibility. I think we do have to come back and look at promoters, because we do have promoters that have unsafe events and they're kind of a one and done. We need to get on the front end of that. So I believe that we have continued discussion on the items that were brought up today. This is not the end of it, but this is a good start.
Move the item.
Second.
So moved by Mr. Buzawader, seconded by Mr. Holston. Mrs. Hoffman?
Yes.
Mr. Holston?
Yes.
Dr. Wells?
Yes.
Mrs. Johnson?
Yeah.
I am a yes. Mrs. Abuzawader?
Yes.
Mr. Outling?
No.
Mrs. Thurm?
Yes.
And Mrs. Hightower?
Yes, but I would like to ask that we do look at those convenience stores too as well.
Thank you.
Because we come back.
Yes,
Yes.
that passes 8-1. So our next item would be boards and commissions, but before we do that, I would like to read a resolution appointing Tewo Jobea. I know that when I say it in my mind, I get it right. Sometimes I say it and it doesn't quite come out right. Whereas on June 30th, 2021, former city manager David Parrish resigned from the city of Greensboro. Whereas Tewo Jobea has extensive leadership experience in both public and private sectors. Whereas the city council finds that Ty Jaoba has the professional and personal qualities to make him the best suited candidate to serve the residents of Greensboro as the next city council. Now therefore be it resolved by the city council of the city of Greensboro that effective February 1st, 2022, Taiwo Jibea, who goes by Ty, which is much easier, is hereby appointed city manager of the city of Greensboro. Further, the mayor is authorized to enter into an employment agreement between the city of Greensboro and Ty Jobea, setting his annualized salary at $280,000 with an executive allowance of $1,000 per month. Can I have a motion?
I move that we accept Ty as our city manager.
Second.
So moved by Mrs. Hightower, seconded by Mr. Holston. Mrs. Hoffman?
Yes.
Mr. Holston?
Yes.
Dr. Wells?
Yes.
Mrs. Johnson?
Yes.
I am a yes. Mrs. Abuzawader?
Yes.
Mr. Outling?
Yes.
Mrs. Thurm?
Yes.
And Mrs. Hightower?
Yes.
That passes 9-0. And I want to say that I am really looking forward to Ty coming into town, and I believe that he might actually be on the Zoom call right now. But I look forward to Ty bringing his experience in planning and transportation. Those are two such important subjects to the city of Greensboro right now. And I know that he will bring his knowledge of these challenges, but not only that, bring solutions to a growing city. So Ty, if you were on the phone, if you would like to say it.
Yes, I do. Good evening, and thank you, Mayor Vaughn and council members. I appreciate the confidence that you have placed in me unanimously tonight as Greensboro's next city manager. And I'm so sorry I'm not able to be there this evening. As you know, I am on vacation this week with my family, which was scheduled several months ago. However, my wife, Ronke, and I look forward to being with you hopefully in January in person, prior to my starting officially on February 1st. I'd like to say that this is an exciting moment for me to be part of something significant. Greensboro, as you know, all know, is a city with a rich civil rights and historic legacy and an active participatory community. And I'd like to quickly say that as the third largest city in our state, Greensboro has set the model for participatory budgeting in Greensboro, which ensures that our residents help determine how public funds are spent. And that's a process that I've admired from the distance, and one that I'm now very glad to be part of. With a growing and diverse population and 1 college per 19 square miles, which is something that really makes me proud. Prominent healthcare presence, many active open spaces, an innovative 2040 comprehensive plan, and recent major economic development announcements that you've made. Our city, Greensboro, is poised for great things, not only in North Carolina, but in these United States and globally. I look forward to working with you, Mayor and Council, and making sure that I lead our staff to accomplishing great things. We will partner with our residents and our business community to champion a more equitable Greensboro. Equity, as you know, is very important to me personally, but also it's something that's very important to our residents and businesses. A city where everyone, regardless of race, regardless of backgrounds, ethnicity, where they come from, ability, socioeconomic status, truly feel that they belong. And we're going to develop and work with you to create priorities that align with your vision that you've set for our city to create a more vibrant and healthy future. So finally, I'd like to say that as we continue to manage the unique challenges that COVID-19 brings, we will continue to prioritize the health and well-being of our employees, follow CDC guidelines and Guilford County public health recommendations. We'll continue to support our small businesses. We've said a lot about them tonight. We'll protect our residents and making sure that our arts and entertainment activities continue to remain vibrant. So once again, Mayor and Council, this is our time as a city, and I'm very, very excited to be part of this moment. Thank you once again. I wish you Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, and I definitely look forward to joining you in person in January at one of the council meetings prior to starting in February. So once again, thank you.
I want to say welcome. We look forward to seeing you and your family in person. We know that you are going to come to love the city of Greensboro. It is a great place to be. I do want to say a special thank you to Chris Wilson, who has been interim city manager. He also is on vacation right now, so it must be city manager vacation time. But he has done a fabulous job along with the rest of our assistant city managers, Trey Davis, Larry Davis, Kim Sowell, city attorney. Thank you all for the work that you've done these last few months, really pitching in. We've had some great economic announcements. Chris will continue to be the chief negotiator on those since he has put so much time in. And we look forward to closing some big deals in the next couple of months. And Ty, we know that you will be here and we look forward to that. But I do want to acknowledge our city staff for the great job that they have done, for giving us some continuous leadership, and it has not gone unnoticed. And Ty will be getting a great team to work with. And I'm really looking forward to you coming and meeting the city staff, and I'm sure that you'll be impressed.
Thank you. Me too. I am definitely looking forward. I have been in touch with Chris, and we're going to definitely have a wonderful time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Enjoy. So now we will move on to boards and commissions. Mrs. Hoffman?
Yes, I would like to appoint Mr. Thomas Sinclair to the Redevelopment Commission. He is replacing Amy Murphy. I think he will be a really good, experienced, strong addition to that commission.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, that passes. Do you have any others?
No, that was all. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Holston, boards, commissions?
Yes, I do have one for the Board of Adjustment to replace the unexpired term of Mary Schemes. I have Mr. Corey Randolph.
Okay. And we had a second on that?
I did.
Mrs. Johnson, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? That passes 9-0. Any others, Mr. Holston?
That completes for tonight.
Dr. Wells? Mrs. Johnson?
No.
I have none. Mrs. Abuzawader? Mr. Outling?
None this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Thurm?
None this evening.
Mrs. Hightower?
No, I have none, but I also continue to solicit District 1 residents, please sign up, because I do have some appointments I need to make, and I'd love to have some new individuals to be able to appoint. So if you're out there listening and you live in District 1, I need you to sign up and serve. Thank you.
Can I echo that for the whole city? That
Yes.
we need to get some for all the districts. As an at-large member, it's really important to me, and also based on my background in community engagement, that folks have a say in what's going on in the city, not just to live here and work here and play here, but also to engage with and help make the decisions for the city.
Agreed. So now we'll go to council comments. Mrs. Hightower?
Since I still have my mask off, right? Thank you. First and foremost, I want to say welcome, the new Mr. City Manager, Ty. I'm excited. I can't wait till he comes. Very impressive. I see the future of the city is bright, very innovative, very thought-provoking individual. And I think he'll bring a lot to the city of Greensboro. And I look forward to working with him these few little months that we still have. And of course, all the time. I think what he's offering, his expertise in transit, he's a planner, he knows design. I mean, so he has, and he knows this stuff very well. He's worked in those areas. So I'm excited. Welcome. Ty, can't wait till you start and see where the city and District 1 is going to be moving forward. And also thanks to Chris Wilson, because Chris really committed more than we really realize. Chris really is a very committed individual. He loves the city. And if he finds any way to say yes, he always will. No matter what you ask him, he said, we'll find a way to do it. You'd be like, Chris, can we do it? Yeah, don't worry, we will. And he does. And so I appreciate all that he's done for us as well here in the city, and all of staff as well. Thank you all, and hope you all have a wonderful, safe holiday. I also would still ask people to please get vaccinated. Omicron is here, or this morning, it's become the dominant virus. And so over, the Delta one. And so please, I know people, you hate this thing right here. It messes up your makeup and your lipstick, and for the women, I get it. But it will protect life, and that's critically important. So please, and I implore my community especially, get vaccinated, get your kids vaccinated. The life you save may be your child's. So I would ask my community to do that. And finally, yesterday, we opened our newest fire station, number 7 on East Wendover, and we officially named it the Ray K. Flowers Fire Station. We named it after the first African-American fire chief here in the city of Greensboro. And there's a lot of legacy there, and there's a lot of history there that I don't know if people really got, because he was in the first segregated class, 1961, fresh out of A&T. He was a graduate. And so that class was all segregated. And look from where he came from that segregated class to being a fire chief over an integrated group of men and women. And we don't even know the struggles that he went through, because he's so humble and he's so quiet and he just gets it done. And I was really honored by the fact that he was our first African-American fire chief and set the trail to be a trailblazer. So please stop by that fire station. It's built really very well. But I would say sometimes we need to give people their flowers while they are alive. And he is here to see us do this. And I think that honor has really gone a long ways, that we are able to give the flowers to Mr. Flowers while he is here among us to celebrate with us. So thank you all for supporting that and for us doing that. Thank you. Have a great holiday.
Mrs. Johnson, council comments?
Yes, I just want to add to the dedication of Fire Station 7, my thanks. I think there looked like about 200 people that came out. I wanted to thank those who were in the class of 61 with Mr. Flowers that came out. I want to thank the Shriners that came out. And I also want to thank his church, Bethel AME Church. Many of them were there, and the city staff did a fantastic job helping the fire department do this. I thought it was a great ceremony. So I just want to say happy holiday to everyone. Be safe. And if you have something to give to somebody who needs it, do it. God bless you.
Thank you. Dr. Wells.
It truly was exciting and rewarding to be a part of the dedication of the Ray K. Flowers Fire Station number 7. So you've probably seen us on TV over and over, because I've seen it a couple of times, where we didn't cut a ribbon, but we, what would they call it? Rolled out a hose.
We uncoupled the hose.
So we were all holding the
Uncoupled the
hose
hose.
instead of a regular ribbon cutting. But thank you all for being a part of that. This is the Christmas season, and people are taking vacations and getting with family. So enjoy your family. Remember the reason for the season, and be sure and get your vaccination. That's very important. That's all I have for today.
Thank you. Mr. Outling.
Nothing this evening beyond welcoming Mr. J.O.B. Really excited for him to join the city team, and I know we all look forward to working with him.
Thank you. Mrs. Thurm.
Yes, thank you. I agree with Councilwoman Hightower that the ability to give somebody honors while they're still living is a special treat. And I thought yesterday's dedication was amazing, and meeting former Chief Flowers was a great experience. To the Assistant City Manager Sol, as we've discussed, there's been a plethora of misinformation out there and going around about the art funds and what the city has done or not done. I'd like to request that the thorough information that you gave us in an email the other day be released to the public, so that people have the facts of the money that we did have given away, and what's slated, how many people and what areas. And also to let the public know that there is a dashboard on our website now where you can see exactly who has received the funds from the COVID relief funds. And if you could please publish that information that you shared with us, because I think the public needs to have the accurate information on what's happened with those funds. I would appreciate that. In addition, on a more personal note, I would like to thank everybody that reached out to me and my fellow members of the Jewish community in the past couple of days after the horrific messages that were delivered to people's homes. It's hard to believe that we still have to deal with these things now, but we do, and we face it way more than we should. Greensboro is a welcoming community. It's a very special community. And we have to make sure that we don't let a few people color what our community looks like. And I really appreciate those of you that have reached out to me and reached out to others in the Jewish community in the past couple of days. That solidarity, and those expressions are very, very meaningful, and we very much appreciate them. So thank you.
Thank you. Before we move on, I do want to say, I kind of put some handouts that are in everybody's folder. And these were just rough numbers that I was trying to pull off to see what we have done with our COVID relief funding for rental assistance. And from what I can see, we've processed, well, we are our community partners. We were working with four community partners: Greensboro Housing Coalition, Greensboro Urban Ministry, Housing Consultants Group, and the Salvation Army. And between those four organizations, they have processed over 4,400 applications, and there has been over 22 million allocated towards those applications. Doesn't mean they've all been paid yet. We're waiting for some additional funding. There are 761 applications that have not been assigned to one of our partners yet. So the city of Greensboro, along with help with financing from the county and our partners, have really made a significant dent in this rent and utility assistance. And Mrs. Hightower requested that there be the dashboard that Mrs. Thurm mentioned, and it is up on the site right now. It probably needs a little tweaking, but it shows, it's even broken down by district, that shows how much money is spent in each district. So I think this is really important information. There has been questions about whether or not certain neighborhoods who have been visited, and that information is on the website as well. We also, I kind of put a second page that shows our notification efforts, and it was in the city water bill, social media, Twitter, Facebook, Nextdoor, on the cities and neighborhood development pages. Most of our pages got it out. Four Seasons Mall, it's in the kiosks throughout the mall. It's been on city buses, city parking garages, city library, Guilford County Social Services. And I do want to point out that Guilford County has eviction diversion personnel in the courthouse as these cases are coming up. And that is really something very important that Guilford County is doing. And then, of course, landlord and community meetings and many media outlets. So I think it's important that we get this information out, because I think there is some misinformation out that we haven't been aggressive spending these funds. And actually, we exceed the national average. And when I say we, it's our partners. It's kind of that royal we. And I want to, give a big thank you to our partners for doing the best they can under difficult circumstances, because as these applications were being processed, the rules were still coming out and still changing, and they were trying to respond to what the federal government was telling us and to all the people who were knocking on the door with these very urgent needs. So I think we should celebrate the work that's been done, especially by the people in the community who have really invested their time and talents to make sure that people wouldn't be evicted, not only during the holiday season, but all year. So
Madam Mayor, if I can
yeah,
add.
so I put this in your files again. It's kind of just a rough draft, but I did want to kind of put it all in one spot.
No, and I just want to echo what you just said. I do want to thank our partners. And I'm a little troubled because sometimes the city gets beat up like we don't do anything and we don't care. But I think we really go, the 10th mile to make sure that people who really need to be served are. And, we're told, well, we're not transparent about it. Well, you also want to respect people too. Everybody don't want everybody to know they're going through something. And I think we have to respect that as well. And our partners do that. They do that very well. They go the 10th mile. They really, really do. And so, the dashboard presented information. I think that everybody will get and see that. And the only thing I think was missing, and we didn't have time to really get that, was gender and probably race. But I know we'll be able to pull that together. But right now, we're trying to make sure that people's rents are being paid and they're not being evicted. And that is happening. And we have made sure it happens. So I appreciate the partners that we have. I've talked to them today, and they get a little upset because they don't, they feel like people don't realize the work that they do, and they do it genuinely from their heart. And they feel like people are just throwing stones at them. And I tell them all the time, it comes with the territory. When you are doing something good, somebody's always going to find something to point at, but it should never stop you. So I just want them to know how much it is appreciated and what the work they do.
And we have to recognize that our neighborhood development department has been working very hard on this as well. And again, regulations keep changing. So
Right.
not only giving out money, trying to make sure that things are in compliance as rules change. And the numbers that I gave you do not include applications that the county has processed. The county had money that included the city of Greensboro, and they have independently processed other applications. So I asked the county for those numbers. We'll probably get them in a couple of days, but there has been huge outreach, I want to say, from the city and the county to make sure that these funds are being spent in the best way possible. While I have the microphone, I do want to say that I was very disturbed by the leaflet that was found at many people's homes on Sunday morning when they went out to get their newspapers. And Mrs. Thurm, I'm sorry that things like that still happen. We saw it with the Asian backlash that happened not too long ago. Our human rights department is looking at a statement in support of our Jewish neighbors and friends. And so hopefully that will be out in the next few days. There was that I know of, there was no other city in North Carolina. I'm on a mayor's listserv, and while that particular leaflet didn't seem to be in any other city, Asheville said that they've noticed that they have had an increase in anti-Semitic literature and things being up on phone poles. So it's something that we really need to keep an eye on. And, some of the people that I've reached out to, if people could look at their security systems or their next door to see if they can, if they have pictures of people leaving stuff in driveways, that would be helpful. I am going to move on to Mary Kay and Hugh, but I do want to recognize the high fashion that we have here tonight. Tammy is here in her holiday sweater, Snow, along with Mary Kay, Goldie, your holly holiday, but Hugh, you've got to take your jacket off. So Mr. Holston really brought it for his first holiday season at the dais, and I just wanted him to be recognized for his wonderful fashion choices. So with that, Mary Kay?
Kind of hard to follow that. Yeah, but we've had fun. Just want to say, echo what everyone said about Fire Station 7. The only thing I can add that you all haven't said is, it was really good to see that they had incorporated parts of the old building and some memorabilia from the old building into the new building. And having been a restaurant owner and worked in the kitchen a lot, I was so impressed with their kitchen. I just can't tell you. And I really wanted to take that home. They had some amazing, now it's, you can click your phone and turn your oven on and, all of this stuff. So anyway, it was good to see the technology that is able to be used in the new buildings, and also the fact that it is a collaboration between the county and the city. So that's really good because EMS is in there. Just want to say that, the last months we've been without a city manager. Welcome, Ty. Welcome aboard. But, shout out to our staff, because they have done a yeoman's work in just everything. Of course, Chris Wilson, Kim Sowell, Larry Davis, Trey Davis, Angie and her staff, Tabany You all have done an amazing job. Chuck, our attorney, I say that to kind of echo what Mrs. Hightower was saying. People don't realize how hard the staff work, and this includes those in the departments as well. We know, but sometimes employees deserve some kudos as well. So the other week we had disability training at Lindley. Several of us were there, disability awareness training, and we got to see Donna Gray, of course, who used to work with the city and is now retired. She was assisting, but that was very eye-opening as well, because we all were put in positions where, as though we had a specific disability, whether it was being blind or being deaf, and or not being able to walk, and to show the barriers as you move along. Even in the Lindley Recreation Center, it was not even easy. Although it is ADA compliant, it still was hard to navigate. So certainly opened my eyes some, and I know several of us as well. Last thing I'll say is, Mrs. Thurman, Mrs. Hoffman, those leaflets that went out, I think everyone in Greensboro is just absolutely disgusted by what was on there. And I certainly hope that people are caught. I can't imagine it would be anyone from Greensboro. I hope I'm not surprised on that, but there's no room for hate in Greensboro. We just don't need it. Last thing is, Merry Christmas to all. Everyone be safe if you're traveling. And I guess we'll have our first meeting in the new year. And let's certainly hope the new year brings us all good health and happiness. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Holston, if you want to close council comments out.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I certainly will. Some of this will be somewhat duplicative, but I also want to welcome Ty as our new city manager. Very excited about him coming in. I know that Councilwoman Hightower talked about vaccines and vaccinations, and my fellow council members know that that is important to me. So definitely, yes, get your vaccinations, get your boosters, and that includes your children, ages 5 and up. I also want to share, for retired Chief Ray Flowers, that was an outstanding dedication to an outstanding man who gave so much to our community. So it was wonderful to be there. Let me also share that I was very happy for the invitation to participate with the Montagnards Dega Association. They had a workshop, and I was able to share and present for their population. It was really, really a good event. But I will say that as a liaison member of the War Memorial Commission, they had their holiday luncheon for the Coliseum and Tanger employees. I had a chance to interact and engage with many of their employees, but a true highlight was a retirement celebration for Mr. Gentry Long. Mr. Long is a 28-year employee, and I don't think he'll mind if I say that he is currently 91 years young, and I don't think I would tussle with him in an arm wrestling contest. It was an outstanding retirement celebration for Mr. Long. He's an outstanding man, given so much to the city of Greensboro, as have many others. But his retirement celebration was really special this past bit. So Mr. Gentry Long, or as they call him, Mr. Gentry or Mr. G, congratulations and good luck in your retirement. And having said that, Merry Christmas, happy holidays, be safe and travel safely. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. And I must apologize. I skipped Mrs. Hoffman. Nancy, do you have any comments?
Yes, no problem. Hate is really such a destructive force, and it's important that we just have to face it, and we have to speak out against it, regardless of how it's directed or to whom it's directed. So I appreciate the comments that we've had over the last couple of days. This is a season of supposedly joy and peace, and I hope that we can experience that with our family and friends. I too really look forward to the new year, to our new city manager who I think really brings some experience and expertise that's really important and that will really be very helpful to us. But I also appreciate, as most of you have expressed, the work, the leadership of Chris Wilson and our other assistant city managers during this interim period of time. We've had a lot going on that they've been involved in, and they've done a great job. So just wishing a good holiday to all of our citizens.
Thank you. Ms. Sowell, any comments from the city manager's office?
Just want to echo sentiments, express thanking our staff. We have a super staff. Thanks for all the hard work. Thanks to our council for your great leadership and helping us navigate another challenging year. Wish you happy holidays and hope you get to enjoy time spent with family and friends.
Thank you. Mr. City Attorney.
Yeah, I'd echo those comments and also say that I've had an opportunity to chat with Ty, and my team and I look forward to working with him to pursue and protect the policy agenda that you all set forth. So happy holidays and see you in the new year.
I did. I think
I failed to mention that the Renaissance Safer City Committee had a dinner last Thursday evening, and it was really nice for the senior citizens in the neighborhood. We all enjoyed it. And I'm proud of that group because they've continued, they've given food just about every week, all during this pandemic, and they've kept going. And I think they said they're the only Safer City group that is still standing. So I want to applaud them for their dedication and what they're doing for our community.
Thank you. Do we have a second? Second. And we are adjourned without objection. Yes. Thank you. Happy holidays.